What's going on, everybody? This is Alex Quin, and you're listening to the Hustle Inspires Hustle podcast. And today, I'm very excited because we're stepping into a kickboxing ring for the first time at 56 with Stuart Warren Dansby. He did the impossible, facing opponents half his age, pushing limits most people wouldn't even dare to test. Stuart, executive producer and protagonist of the award-winning documentary Taking the Fight, turned his 15-year journey of setbacks, resilience, and victory into a powerful lesson on overcoming fear, embracing challenges, and finding the right team to push it forward. In this episode, we break down the mindset of champions, the difference between obstacles and opportunities, and how anyone, no matter what industry or stage in life, can step into their own fight and come out stronger. Stuart, welcome to the show. What's up, man?
Thanks, Alex. That was a hell of an intro, and I'm super privileged to be here. I absolutely, sincerely love the work you're doing. From the title of the podcast to the people you have on it, like it is my groove, if you will. It's all about that hustle and what we achieve in life. So thank you for having me, man.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
man, it's the honor is mine. It was really important to get you on here. I know last time we had technical difficulties. We overcame them. This time, this week, I've been so sick, and I was like, I need to have energy to be able to talk to Stuart. I was overcoming being under the weather. I'm feeling a lot better today, and I'm excited that we're talking. I was really taken back by your story, and also really love that you're working with one of my buddies, Carlos Pita. He connected us. So there's history there. I went to high school with his brother Andy Pita. They're very, very talented people in the entertainment space, and you're doing something incredible. You're winning tons of awards with your documentary. You're kicking people's asses. Like you're doing your thing, man. And I want to hear all about it. So let's give everybody a quick little breakdown, and then we'll jump into some questions I have for you.
Perfect. You want to lead or you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's break. How did this 15-year journey turn into you stepping into the ring now, kicking ass, and having a documentary telling the entire story?
Yeah. So it's a question we get asked a lot. Like, why? Why would you do this? What's wrong with you? I
Why
started.
not?
I always thought I was an
Why not?
athlete,
You
and I
know?
started. Yeah, I started training at like 48, but didn't take it seriously. Just started kickboxing, and I was horrible at it. It was the first time in my life where I went, "You are not an athlete. You're." I looked like, remember the old Rock'em Sock'em robots,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
looked like that, right? I was just awkward, horrible, 125-pound guy standing in front of me, beating my ass, and I'm like, "Please don't kill me." It was just humbling, but I
Right.
knew at that moment I loved it because it was so difficult. I embraced it, and I knew it couldn't beat me, right? So I started just training, but I wasn't really consistent. I wasn't living the fighter's life, so to speak, right? Because there's a difference between training and living as an athlete. It's a big step. And all along, I was testing for belts in kickboxing, and then the guy that owns the gym that I train at, who's in the documentary, KO Zone, comes up to me and says, "It's time to test for your black belt." And I walked over to my coach, Greg Choplin. Greg's a two-time WBC World Muay Thai champion. I said, "Hey, man, Diego wants me to test for my black belt. Do you think I'm ready?" And Alex, I was probably looking for a compliment from Greg, right? I'm like, "Hey, do you think I'm ready?"
Hell
But I
no.
also was questioning myself. I'm like, "Am I ready?" And Greg looks at me and he says, "If you ever had a great coaches know how to climb inside your head." And he looks at me and says, "Well, I have a different take on it." I'm like, "What's that?" He said, "I don't think you can be a black belt until you take a fight." And Alex, he turned, doesn't say another word. He turns and he walks away. And I'm staring at the back of his head, and I'm like, "You mother, you, you," and in my head, I'm like, "You just called me out. You just called me out," and walked away,
Yeah.
right? And that's how it all started. Because that moment, I made a decision. Because we all have these things about our dreams, right? We all have these fantasies of what our dreams are. In my case, I'm doing this, and you fantasize, could I beat somebody in a ring? How good could I be, right? You think about that. And I knew this was my moment. I knew Greg would never say it again. He'd never bring it up again. But I knew this was my moment to say, I get to define who I am. And more importantly, I get to define who I want to be.
Right.
And it scared the hell out of me. But I knew I wouldn't regret it. I knew I could define who I wanted to be, regardless of the experience, right? Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, so did you approach it from a perspective of like at first you started doing it for the benefits, yeah, of health and mindset, but then once it developed, you realized that you would actually be ready to compete? Because I mean, you don't actually have to compete, right? You could just go down the road of, hey, I'm just gonna practice and just make it part of my life, but I don't have to step into the ring.
Most people, that's what most people do. They hit pads with a coach, they hit a bag.
Yeah,
That's what most
that's me.
sane people.
That's me at kickboxing classes.
Yeah, and there's nothing. That's great. There's nothing wrong with it. No, I think from the first moment, it lit the competitive fire in me. And even the first guy I trained with, I said, "Hey, I want to take a fight." He goes, "You don't want to do that. You don't want to live that life. It's crazy. It's injurious. You got to live a Spartan life." He's like, "No, we'll just go to the various gyms and we'll spar."
Right.
But for me, it was always there. It was always in the back of my head. And when Greg challenged me at that moment, I'm like, I got to do this. I thought about it for a couple of days, um, but I knew what I was going to do. And I came up to him and I said, "Hey, I want to take a fight." He was taking off on a business trip because I'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll talk. He came back after a couple of weeks and I'd already dropped like 15 pounds. I'd already started ramping it up. He said,
Yeah.
"Okay, you're serious." And this was the only argument I ever won with my coach. He said, "Okay, if you're serious, I'm uh, my mid 50s at this point." He says, "I'll get you somebody in your 50s." And I'm like, "Nope." And he said, "Okay, all right, I'll get you somebody in their 40s." "Nope." He rolls his eyes. He's like, "30s?" I said, "Greg, it's really simple. You'll get me a first time fighter, like any other first time fighter. Guy's got zero or one or two fights. If I win, it ain't because I'm in my 50s. If he wins, it ain't because he's 22. The best fighter will win. And nobody's putting an asterisk next to it that you're going to grade on a curve and make it easier on me. I won't do it. I will walk out of the ring." It's the only argument I've ever
That's
won with him, Alex, in 10 years of training with him. He's like, "Okay, that was it."
Stuart, question, man. Like your loved ones, your family, when you're like talking crazy about doing all this shit, what are they telling you?
That's interesting, and I know you've seen the documentary. My wife, that's the question most married guys ask me is, "How does your wife let you do that?" Right? Every dude listens, and it's like, "But she let you?" And what I'll share with you is this. Certainly, she was always there. In fact, in my corner when I was sparring, I'd come out of the corner and she'd be like, "Hey, you know that guy's killing you with his jab, right?" I'm like, what? "Yeah, why don't you stop his jab? You know the jab's coming." And I'm like, "What? You go in there and stop his jab." But the point is, from day one, she was there in my corner, believing in me. Now, when I finally decided to take a fight, she had fear of that, but she
Yeah,
didn't show it. And I never knew it till after. And then 2 weeks before my fight, she walks up and this is probably the strongest statement. And she says, "Babe, can I be with you when you fight? Can I be in your corner?" And in my head, I said to myself, "I've got Manolo Lopez, who's in the MMA Hall of Fame. I've got Greg Choplin in my corner, two-time world champion." In my head, I'm like, what are you possibly going to say that two guys with 15 and 30 years of experience, like, how could you? But I didn't say that, right?
you thought it.
I didn't
Yeah,
say it.
you thought it.
It was a good thing I didn't, right? I turned and I looked at her, and she obviously
You would
saw
have
what I
caught a
was
jab from
thinking.
her.
Yeah, dude, she's Colombian. Do I need to say
I'm
more?
Colombian. I'm
All
Colombian.
right, so you get it. So she looked at me and she said, "Not to tell you how to fight. I want to be there to be your grounding, your emotional strength. I want to be there to be the love that you feel and give you strength when you're in that ring."
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the most profound things we can do for our loved ones when they go on a journey that we don't necessarily understand, but it's a journey they're passionate about. It's a journey of self improvement. It's a journey that we don't know how it's going to turn out, whatever that is. If it's business, if it's getting in shape, if it's being a CEO, all those things. I think that's where we have to really be unconditional in our support of our loved ones and say, if this person's putting in the work and they're sincere and they're showing the dedication, I've got to support them. And it was remarkable that she's been to every one of my fights. And think about the opposite. What if she was sitting in the fight like, "Don't get hurt, don't get hurt"? That would affect me as
yeah,
opposed to strengthen me.
yeah. Yeah, because that probably be weighing on you the whole time
Yeah,
subconsciously.
exactly.
At best. Stuart, the documentary frames fighting as a metaphor for life. How did your experience in the ring change the way you approach obstacles outside of fighting now?
It's a great question, and we worked really hard to make sure this wasn't a fighting documentary any more than Rocky's a boxing movie, right? We made sure to tell the story where if you're a soccer mom, if you're a grandparent, if you're 22 and trying to achieve things in this world, that you look at this and say, I get it. I see the comparisons to what I need to do in my life. I think there's a couple things that it really profoundly affected me in. And there's an expression we have in fighting, which is you win or you learn. And it's very simple.
Yeah.
You win or you learn. I'll have friends of mine that, because I train down at Freedom Fighters MMA, professional fighters will come to me and say, hey, man, did you see that fight? And, yeah, I got robbed. The judges did this. And I'm like, what? You lost the fight, bro. Yeah, but the judges, I'm like, did you win? No.
Yeah, you
What did you learn? Because anything else in between is your ego defending yourself.
mm,
And that's the beauty of fighting and of sports is it's black and white, man. So for me, I learned I was going to lose between 10 and 20 rounds to win one because I'm going against guys much better than me, much younger than me. And I learned no matter what, just keep getting back up, learn from what just happened, learn from the mistakes, and keep pushing forward, and you will improve. That's the big thing that I learned. And the other thing I learned is there aren't really obstacles and problems. Everything is a challenge. And it's not going to come to you necessarily handed to you on a plate. But if I walk up to you right now, Alex, and I say, okay, Alex, we got a problem. It's like internally, or right, what? Right? Our blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up a little bit. If I say, hey man, we've got a challenge we need to solve, it's a whole different mindset, right?
approach,
And
yeah.
as I've always shared with my son, the difference between obstacles and challenge is one word, and that's our perspective.
Mhm.
So, what fighting taught me was the perspective of when shit hits the fan in life, problems come at you, obstacles come at you. Have the perspective of one, how can I turn this into a challenge? And two, what can I learn from it? Because those are your opportunities for growth as a human being in those moments.
You know, what you're saying is really resonating with me because there's a book behind me somewhere in that craziness of books called The Obstacle is the Way. It was gifted to me by one of my business partners. And it talks about that, the obstacle is the way because it's part of the way. So you have to figure out a way around or over the obstacle under it and just see it as a challenge rather than seeing it as an why me? Why is this happening to me? Et cetera, et cetera. So, I resonate a lot with that because that pushes you to either be great and break through barriers, or it could potentially just limit you to not do anything. Like you could have just been like, "Nah, I'm gonna get my ass kicked by this 20-year-old kid. I can't do that." And or when the guy tried you, you could have been like, "You know what? You're right. I haven't competed. I can't say shit." No, like you took it on as a challenge rather than as oh, he doesn't think I'm good enough. Because there is some people that their self-esteem is so that guy could have told you that, and you could have just gone back to your house, and you wouldn't even have 20
Yeah,
a documentary with 20 awards.
yeah, that's a great point. I never thought of it that way, but I could have gone back and said, "Yeah, my coach doubts me. How am I going to
Yeah,
do it?"
you're right. Yeah, he's absolutely right. He's my coach, and it's what am I thinking? Like it could have gone down that route.
Yeah, and I had a moment like that, and I'm going to relate this into back into business. In my first in the training camp that you see leading up to that first fight, it was a Friday afternoon, and I was training with my coach Greg. I came in exhausted. Let me give you a little bit of a precursor to this. My right knee does not have an ACL. I have grade 4 arthritis. It's bone on bone. Medically speaking, the last surgeon that was in there 7 years ago said, I cannot explain how you can walk on it from a medical aspect. There is no explanation, much less train, much less fight. My left knee, grade 4 arthritis, surgically repaired ACL, the degenerative disc in my neck, and I have asthma. So going through a training camp with the constant pounding, the blocking of punches that put stress on my neck, throwing of punches, hitting pads, all that just wears you out. And as you can imagine, at my age, I don't recover as fast as somebody that's 26. So I come in on a Friday, train with my coach, and then do a class, and we're like 2.5 hours in, we start sparring. And I'm going against a young guy named Alex Rogers. Alex fights at 125, and he just beats my ass. He just manhandles me, and he keeps clinching and he keeps kneeing me in the kidney. He's kneeing me over and over. And I absolutely, all I wanted for the session was to be over. And Greg comes up to me afterwards. I'm trying to sneak out of the gym because I know I sucked, right? And he's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm leaving." He said, "We need to talk." And he said, "What are you doing? Your hands are down around your waist. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "My hands weren't down." He holds out his phone, Alex. He had filmed me. He said, "What do you call that?" Like, oh. He goes, "You know what? You act like a guy who doesn't want to be here." And I said, "Greg, I'm tired. I'm sore. My knees are swollen. I am absolutely exhausted." And he said, "You're supposed to be. You're supposed to be exhausted. You're supposed to be sore. You're
Right.
supposed to feel like that. Because if you don't,
Then
then
you're
don't call
unskilled.
yourself a fighter.
Yeah, then
And
you're
for
unskilled.
damn sure, you will never be a champion
Right.
until you can change that mentality." And he said, "When that moment comes that it sucks and Alex is bearing down on you and he's kicking your ass and there's 2 minutes left in the round, that is your moment to figure out who you are. And I don't expect you to win every round, but I expect you to fight with heart, technically the way you're supposed to, not fight like a guy who doesn't want to be there." And I was beat down. I drove home. And you ever read the novel Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes? It was
Never
written in the
finished it.
14th century.
I started it in high school, never finished it.
But you know the story. The story is an old man who thinks he's a young man, thinks he's a knight. He rides around on a burro with a broomstick chasing windmills, but he thinks he's a knight on a stallion fighting dragons, right? He's a completely delusional. I went home that night. I looked at my wife and I said, I crawled in the door and I said, "I think I'm Don Quixote." She's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Dude, I lose every round. I completely underestimated my skill set or
Yeah.
overestimated, and I underestimated how hard training camp's going to be." I'm like, I don't. All I do is lose. I don't know how I'm ever going to beat anybody. And she talked to me and she said, "Do you think Greg Choplin and Manolo Lopez would actually put all of their energy well beyond what they're supposed to if they didn't believe in you?" And so I kind of went home. I went to bed that night with her words in my head and Greg's words in my head. And I woke up the next morning and I said, "Okay, got it. This is the time. This is the time when I decide who I am." So my mindset was right. I literally taken so many knees to my kidneys, I was peeing blood. And I said to myself, "Okay, I've heard of
Ah.
this before. Other fighters have told me about this. It'll pass, it'll go away." And fighters are just like doctors. So why not believe them, right? Yeah, exactly. How stupid was that? But I just said to myself, "Okay, go spar.
Wow.
If it doesn't clear up by this afternoon, you'll go to the hospital. But right now, you're going to go spar." So I go down to Freedom Fighters. There's a fighter named Yoel Romero. At the time, he was the #1 middleweight in the UFC. He's a monster. Olympic champion in wrestling, a monster, known for his ferocity, knocking people out. We're all sitting around. I trained with my coach, Manolo. We're all sitting around waiting for sparring to start. And Manolo walks in. "Alex, there's 15 other professional mixed martial artists there." And he looks at me with his thick accent and he goes, "Stuart, you and me, first round, bro." It's just seriously. I tried to make a joke. I went, "Yoel, you got 15 other real fighters here. Why are you picking on the gringo?" He goes, "Come on, bro." And Alex, that was my moment. That changed everything because I heard Greg's words and I'm like, "You're tired, more tired than yesterday. You're injured, more injured. Now you're peeing blood. And
Oh,
this monster who is levels and levels and
called
levels
you out.
above you just called me out
Yeah.
and everybody else is watching." And I said, "This is your moment. This is your moment to decide." And I just went, "I'm going to come at him with everything I can. I know I can't beat him, but I'm going to give him the best round he's ever had from me. And I'm going to
Yeah.
make him uncomfortable."
Yeah.
And I did. I went at him with everything. In the last 30 seconds of the round, he pushes me in the corner and we just start trading punches in the pocket. And he's like, "Come on, come on, come on, keep going." And I finish and he just grabs me and he hugs me and he says, "I love you, bro." And what I did there was two things. There's something called servant leadership, and that's leading others by serving them. Yoel was getting ready to fight for the UFC title. If he chose me to spar with him, I better give him everything I have to make him better for that fight. And so I served him by just leading with my own face and giving
Yeah.
him everything I. And what I also learned that day, I wasn't better than Yoel. I was this much better than the Stuart Dansby that was sparring on Friday afternoon and getting his ass kicked. I was this much better.
Yeah.
And that's all that mattered because I embraced that moment. Now,
1%.
how this
1% a
happens for
day.
you in
Yeah.
business is you're not going to be sitting there in business going, okay, got my plate here, my fork here, the table set. I have all the resources I need over here, all the financing I need, and all the time. Bring me the obstacles. I'm ready to grow. That's not how it happens in business, man. It happens when your boss hands you a project and you're already overloaded, and then somebody else asks you to do this, and you look and you're like, I don't have the skill set for this. We don't have the resources for this as a company. I don't have the time for this. And that's where we get caught up in obstacles and problems because it's overwhelming us. And that's where that perspective, those are your moments
Yeah.
to again decide who you want to be. Those are your greatest moments of personal growth when you can look at that as a challenge and say, I might not do it amazingly well, but I'm going to kick this challenge's ass with everything I have. I'm going to open my mind to what I can do and what I can learn, and I'm going to achieve it. Does that make sense?
That was a great story, man. That was super cool to hear. Cause like that moment when he hugged you, like it's cool. It's cool for like for there to be other people that want to see you like do good. Like, cause he could like you said, why are you calling me out? It's like, well, because I see you, bro. Like sometimes people see you, you know what I mean? Like I see you, like I see what you're doing, and like you can't avoid it anymore. We got to do it right now. And I think
Yeah.
that was cool. That was cool as shit. So, what did you learn about storytelling through the process of making the film? And how has it
You know,
affected your experiences with people now or your conversations?
yeah, that's a great question, man. The thing I was afraid of and just petrified was that this would turn into a narcissistic look at me, look at me, look at me journey, right? And I didn't want it to be that. I am simply the conduit to tell the story of how to achieve whatever it is your dream is, regardless of what you think obstacles and problems are there. I'm the conduit to show you how to do this
Right.
from point A to point B and how to develop the power of the unified team. That's the story I wanted to tell. But the first, I we probably went through 5 or 6 editors, and the first 5 or 6 times I would look at it and I would be like, it's horrible, it's clunky, it's just people talking about me. Like the testimonials are still awkward for me to watch, but it didn't tell the story, and that's where I said, okay, we got to go back and find somebody who actually knows the story, which was Carlos, who really understood the story, right?
Pita.
And then what I learned was be your authentic self. Tell the truth. You've seen the documentary. It shows the losses. It shows the pain. It shows the injuries. It shows the heartache,
Everything's
right?
pretty. Yeah.
People will respect that as long as you get up with a smile on your face and you're not a victim and you say, I'm going to try harder. People will respect that. So be authentic. Don't try and tell a story that isn't really your story or that you're not passionate about,
Yeah.
because when you tell it authentically, then other human beings will relate to it.
I hear that. How do you how do you want to be remembered?
So that nobody's ever asked me that, Alex.
My football coach in high school always asked me that.
So it's not an age thing. That's good.
No, it's not. It's never an age thing. It's just like everybody wants to be remembered
I
so
think how I would want to be remembered is someone, even now, my mission is to help others. It's to help other people achieve what they think they can't. And I've, within the documentary, or as an adjunct of the documentary, started a public speaking career as well, and driving the message of the lessons learned in fighting and how that applies in business or to your personal life or to your personal goals, right?
yeah.
So I think I would want to be remembered as a mentor, as somebody who gave everything he had to help other people. And I'm confident enough to say the people that I work with would tell you that, both my teammates and the people in my professional life.
Right.
And somebody who approached every day with positivity and passion. And I preach that, right? I have an expression of rise, grind, function, achieve in gratitude every day,
Yeah.
right? Every day. And we all preach this, right? That we only have one life, we only have one today, but we need to constantly remind ourselves of that. So I think those are the things I would like people to say about me.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel pretty good that most people would.
They would, yeah. Especially based off all those amazing testimonials, right? Like, not, you could get one or two people to say something nice about you, but when there's an undeniable movement, it means that there's something there. So I'm excited that we got to talk, man. I can't wait till we meet in person. We got to make it happen with Carlos. So Carlos, you're listening
Let's
to this
do it.
right now in your car or wherever you are. We got to get dinner lined up with Stuart. Stuart, I'm really happy you came on. Where can we follow you on socials?
Stuart Warren Dansby on Instagram,
Yeah,
just my full name. And also, check out if the website is really simple. It's takingthefight.com.
great.
From
Yeah,
there, you can send me an email. You can see the trailer. You can also, there's a where to watch.
yeah.
You can click that button. Right now, the documentary is streaming on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, iTunes, and Google Play in 36 different countries. So whether it's through, and my links for Instagram are also on the website, takingthefight.com. But please reach out if you have any questions. I have a lot of people that do and a lot of people that DM me because of the documentary. And it's everything from fighting advice, guys in their 40s and 50s, to people saying, struggling with achieving, struggling with understanding what my dream is. Can you help me? Excuse me. And I absolutely live for that. And I live to try and help people achieve what they're challenged to achieve.
Stuart, we appreciate you, man. Listen, y'all, if you enjoyed this episode, you found value in the episode, wherever you're listening to this, go on the episode page of the app you're listening on, and you'll find the links to everything we talked about here today. You could also follow Stuart, or you could go on hustleandspiresalsa.com/podcast, find the episode, and you'll see absolutely everything there. Until next time, Alex Quin, Stuart Warren Dansby. See you on the next episode.